Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to completely untangle the wild 80-year identity crisis of the word hologram. We're tracing this fascinating term all the way from handwritten historical artifacts, literally pen and paper, through decades of scientific breakthroughs and pop culture misunderstandings, right up to the insane screenless devices that are going to be sitting in your living room in 2026. It is a massive journey, so let's just jump right in. Okay, so here's our chronological roadmap for today. We've got 4 stops. First, the meaning of whole writing. Second, lasers, art, and stickers. Third, the pop culture hijack. And finally, the true 3D future. Moving right into section 1, the meaning of whole writing. We're starting our journey by looking back at these surprising, entirely analog origins of the term itself. See, originally, the concept of a holograph had absolutely zero to do with glowing sci-fi projections. If we look at the Greek roots, holos means whole, and grapho means to write, literally whole writing. It was simply a document written entirely in the handwriting of its author. Think of something like Virginia Woolf scribbling unedited drafts on a notepad. That holograph represented an indisputable physical truth, the entire original message straight from the source. But then, how in the world do we jump from Virginia Woolf's notepad to optical physics? Well, in 1947, a scientist named Dennis Gabor borrowed the concept. He swapped grapho for gram because he was desperately looking for a new term. He needed a way to describe capturing the entire authentic message of a light wave, specifically both its amplitude and its phase. And this distinction is absolutely crucial. A flat, traditional photograph really just snaps the intensity of light hitting a lens. It's basically a flattened shadow. But Gabor realized you could do so much more. By capturing the amplitude and the phase, you are effectively freezing the exact 3D geometry of the light waves themselves. You aren't just taking a picture, you are capturing the whole physical presence of that light. Now, you might be wondering, how does the physics actually work to make that happen? Well, you do it by deliberately crashing light beams together. You take a pure light beam, split it perfectly in half, bounce one half off your object, and then let those two beams crash right back into each other. What you're recording is the resulting interference pattern. To really wrap our heads around this, think of tossing 2 pebbles into a perfectly still pond. A normal photograph, that just takes a flat snapshot of the water's surface. But a hologram freezes the exact, precise moment and pattern where those ripples crash into each other. Mathematically speaking, having that interference pattern means you can reverse engineer exactly where those pebbles dropped and exactly how big they were. It's capturing the entire event. Which brings us to section 2, lasers, art, and stickers. So Gabor's brilliant idea, initially, it was totally dead in the water. Why? Because normal white light, like from a light bulb or the sun, is just way too messy and chaotic to record those super delicate wave patterns. The science literally had to wait for the tech to catch up. And that finally happened in 1960 with the invention of the laser. The laser gave scientists the pure, highly focused light source they needed, allowing them to create a clear, 3D image of a toy train, completely proving Gabor's theory true. And from there, as you can see, the timeline just explodes. Once lasers made this possible, artists were all over it. We entered this amazing artistic golden age in the 1970s. You had Salvador Dali, yes, that's Salvador Dali, making these crazy laser holograms of disembodied hands. Entire institutions, like the Museum of Holography down in Soho, opened up just to showcase this magic. Because true holograms require a microscopic topography of light, they are beautifully complex. In fact, they're so unhackable that Visa started putting the Dove security hologram on credit cards in 1984. The cultural impact was so massive that when that Soho museum eventually went bankrupt, MIT actually swooped in and dropped $180,000 just to rescue the archive and save the medium's history. But here's where the massive identity crisis kicks in. If true holograms require pure lasers and microscopic precision, how on earth did the word become so cheapened? 2 words, mass production. In the 1990s, manufacturers figured out they could take a highly complex master hologram and just stamp its microscopic pattern onto cheap metallic foil. Suddenly, this incredible, unhackable optical physics was being slapped onto Kellogg's cereal boxes and kids' trading cards. This embossing process completely diluted the word. To the general public, hologram just started to mean practically anything shiny. All right, section 3, the pop culture hijack. Now, what's really fascinating about this next era is how pop culture didn't just dilute the definition, they literally shattered it, dragging us into an age of total linguistic confusion. The absolute peak of this was the 2012 Coachella Festival. A digital illusion of Tupac Shakur appeared on stage, and everyone, the fans, the press, the entire internet, universally ran with the hijacked term hologram. But scientifically speaking, there was literally zero 3D geometry captured there. None. Zero. It was purely a two-dimensional projection relying on a 150-year-old theatrical parlor trick called Pepper's Ghost. Basically, it uses a hidden screen reflecting an image onto an angled piece of transparent glass or foil to create this flat illusion of depth. It's a super cool trick, for sure, but it is absolutely not, by any scientific definition, a hologram. Because the public had thoroughly hijacked the word for literally any digital avatar or stage trick, tech giants in the 2020s essentially just threw their hands up. They abandoned the term entirely. They rebranded to spatial computing. And that ushered in our modern era of massive headsets to try and solve the 3D problem from a totally different angle. And this massive pivot led to incredibly complex and heavily priced hardware. We're talking things like Meta's VR gear and Apple's Vision Pro, which, carries a staggering price tag of $3,499. But there's a catch. When you look closely at these heavy-face computers, their fatal flaw really stands out, and that's physiological isolation. Think about it. You simply cannot share a spontaneous, magical visual moment with your family in the living room while you have a heavy computer strapped to your face. It totally isolates you from a shared human experience. Which leads us to our final stop, Section 4, the true 3D future. That exact market vacuum, that desperate desire for shared communal 3D experiences without the isolation, has birthed the true holography of 2026. We are finally ditching the wearables entirely. Take the Looking Glass Musubi frame as a prime example. At a dramatically more accessible $149, this screenless revolution sits right on your shelf. No headset required, and it's an absolute game changer. Instead of requiring a massive laser lab to capture 3D geometry, this tech uses AI. It literally extrapolates depth from your standard, everyday 2D phone photos. It layers that data into a dense light field, projecting a shared, glasses-free 3D volume right into your room. We are finally dissolving the flat screen. And on the absolute bleeding edge, a company called Lightfield Lab is doing something even wilder with their solid light tech. They are computationally projecting actual physical objects into open air. By coordinating millions of precise light beams to intersect at specific points in midair, they create a physical interference pattern you can actually see from any angle with no screen behind it. After 80 years of trying to escape the flat 2D plane, this technology is finally returning us to Dennis Gabor's authentic, original vision of capturing the whole message. So as we look at this incredible timeline and the reality of 2026, with these groundbreaking devices sitting on our shelves, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. As these frames and light fields normalize hyper-realistic volumetric memories right in our living rooms, how will interacting with the actual 3D ghosts of our past alter the fundamental ways human beings process grief and nostalgia? It's a profound shift in how we're going to remember our own histories. Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.